Hi, I hope you enjoyed going to the Australian Zoo today. I thought that was pretty cool. Who knew on a Friday we were going to go to Australia to visit a zoo? All right, this week we've been talking in science about animals' habitats, those places or those systems that give them everything they need to survive. It gives them their air, their food, their water, and their shelter, and how important those habitats or those systems are to the survival of those plants and animals. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about zoos, which we just went on a field trip to the zoo, okay? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to open up your science workbook, and I'd like you to open up to page 117. Page 117, okay? We're going to talk about zoos today and how important zoos are, because we all enjoy going to them, but there's a lot of work that goes into designing a zoo. So designers of zoos supervise every part of the project. They have to look, do they have the right water there? Do they have the right trees there? Do they have the right rocks there? Because what they're really doing is they're making sure that they understand each of those animals' natural habitats, those systems where they live when they're not in the zoo. So it's really important that they understand those habitats so that when they're designing those different places in the zoo for the animals, that they are giving them everything they need. Which is why, if you saw in the video, did every part of that zoo look the same? No, it doesn't. What they do when zoo designers go in to work on a zoo, they study each of the habitats of the animals that are going to live in that zoo. And then they create those habitats throughout the zoo so that the animals feel like they're living in their natural habitat. So if we take a look in our science workbook, let's look at three different parts of the zoo. Let's look at three different parts, pictures of the zoo, okay? All right, so if we're looking at these three different parts, do they all look the same? No, they don't. They all look different, right? Take a look at the top picture, okay? So the top picture has all those beautiful birds, right? Those beautiful, colorful birds. Well, what do they have there for those birds that's so important? Right? They have those big tree limbs for those birds to sit on, right? They like to perch, okay? Now, if I take a look at this picture, look at what's in the background for that giraffe. Really tall what? Really tall trees, right? Because giraffes like to eat leaves, right? So those really tall trees are there for those giraffes. And then take a look down at the bottom. The alligators. What's really important to the alligator's habitat? What does the alligator need? It needs that body of water, right? Okay. Would the alligators and the giraffes and these beautiful birds, would they all be in the same habitat in the zoo? No, they really keep them separate so that they're able to stay in their own habitat and get what they need. But it also protects them from each other as well, right? Because they could become something that another animal eats. We've talked before about how, some animals feed on other animals when we talked about carnivores. Well, we want to make sure that when they're living in the zoo, those animals don't become somebody else's dinner, right? So we want to make sure of that. So zoo designers design the zoo not only to give each animal its own habitat, its system of food, air, water, and shelter to keep it safe, or to help it survive, but it also gives it their own habitat so that there are no other animals hunting them or tracking them down, okay? So it helps them keep in a safe habitat as well within a zoo. All right, so a lot of times when zoo designers are making a zoo, they might make a small, remember old MacDonald had a wood shop, made a little barn, right? It's a little barn, not a big giant barn, it was a little barn. Well, a lot of times zoo designers will do the same thing. They'll make a little zoo. They'll make almost like a dollhouse shape one or size. They'll make a little a little zoo so that they can lay out and then they can really look at each of the areas where the animals are going to live and make sure that each of those areas have what that animal needs in order to survive. Now, one thing that I thought was really, really cute, two things from the video that I absolutely loved from the Australian Zoo field trip was, I love the wombats, and when he explained how they use their bottoms, which are really hard to protect themselves. Did you remember when he said they burrow down into the ground, and if something is coming to hunt it, it puts its bottom up in the air, and because its bottom is hard, whoever's trying to catch it can't get a bite of him because his bottom is so hard. I thought that was really interesting. And I love the wildlife hospital and the little koala bear who had a broken arm and they had the little cast on it on the outside. I thought that was really creative and interesting. So I hope you enjoyed the visit to the Australian Zoo. What you are going to do now is you're going to turn the page in your science workbook. And on this page, in this big box, you are going to design a place for a zoo animal. You're going to choose any animal that you've ever seen, maybe at a zoo or maybe that you just know about and you've seen it in its habitat before. You are going to become a zoo designer. And in your zoo, you're going to draw for that one animal. You're not drawing a bunch of animals, you're just choosing one animal. You're going to draw a picture of what you would make that zoo space look like. You want to make sure that you would have a shelter for that animal. So say like you were doing a lion. Well, lions like to sleep in caves, so you would want to make sure you would have a cave there. Lions are meat eaters, so you'd want to sure you have some meat there for them. They need water, right? So you want to make sure you have water there for them. Now, not everybody should be choosing a lion because I think there are lots of zoo animals that you could choose. You could choose alligators, you could choose giraffes, you could choose the polar bears. I want you to think about an animal from the zoo. And what I'd like you to do is draw a picture of how you would be a zoo designer for that animal. What would you make its space look like? Okay? And then what I would love to do is I would love to have you share with me on Flipgrid the animal you chose, and I'd love to see the picture of the zoo that you would design for that animal, that zoo space, not a whole giant zoo, just that little space in the zoo for the animal that you choose, okay? All right, have fun with it, friends, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what your zoos look like. All right, good job, friends.